welcome back to another video of Just Disciple. I'm Kenny with Ken.
Hey, what's up, man?
And we are going to be talking about Bible translations. What is the best Bible translation? Mr. Ken Freire, tell me, what is the best Bible translation?
I know many of you have been wondering this question, and I'm going to answer it right now. It's super easy. There isn't one.
Are you sure?
Actually, there is one. It starts with, I'm just kidding, I'm not going to go that route. There is actually not one, because we have been blessed to have so many great translations in the 21st century. We actually have a lot of good ones that we could go through. I personally, right now, I'm reading the Christian Standard Bible, the CSB. I've really come to enjoy it. But I was raised and grew up with the NIV, the 1987 version. So I've enjoyed it. I've memorized most of my verses from the NIV.
Yep, I love that. The new
International version.
Yeah. And I believe it's the 84 version, not the 87, but...
You sure?
Google it.
Google it.
All right.
We'll do an addendum.
So there's a couple different reasons why people would use different ones. I think it's important to know the differences between different Bible translations. There's different types of Bible translation, different philosophies.
Yeah. There's
two big categories. There's actually more than just two, but the two we kind of really think about is dynamic translations versus functional equivalent translations. The equivalent translations, they're trying to more nail the more literal word for word, where the dynamic is trying to more go phrase by phrase or chunks of words, and they're not necessarily always feeling the need to literally translate every word identical word for word, but they're willing to be a little, if I say the word loose, that sounds bad, but they're willing to be a little loose on the word for word. Let me give you an example. We're both Spanish speakers.
Yeah.
If I say to you, me gusta hamburguesas, that's Spanish for...
I like hamburgers.
But does it actually mean I like hamburgers?
It can mean something else.
Right. Me gusta literally translates is to me it is pleasing.
Yeah.
Or unto me it is pleasing hamburgers. So if you're going to do a functional equivalent translation of that Spanish phrase, me gusta is unto me, hamburguesas, hamburgers. So unto me I am pleased hamburgers. But if you're
That's a little awkward.
That's awkward, right? And so that would be the functional word for word equivalent, right? But when you're interpreting for someone, you don't actually do that.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of just goofy. It's awkward. It doesn't make sense to the English speaker. So when someone says, me gusta hamburguesas, if I'm interpreting that, I'm going to say, I like hamburgers. Even though I've literally changed what the person has said, but in changing what they've said, I've actually made it more understandable to the person listening. And that's, in essence, what Bible translations are trying to do. They're, rather than always going precisely word for word, they're willing to take some liberty with the original language in hopes of making it a little bit more, understandable to the end reader. That's the goal. Ken, tell us why someone might choose one or the other.
Yeah, I think that you would be more in the dynamic category as if you're a new Christian, you're just trying to figure things out. The literal may be a little too confusing for you. Mm-hmm. So if you're a new believer just trying to get into the word, the dynamic will be more helpful. It's easier to understand. You will go more to the equivalents if all of a sudden you're like, hey, I want to get more literal to it. I want to understand how it's as close as possible to the original context or the original language. So that's more helpful in that manner. So for many of you who are watching this, you might be a young believer and you're like, where do I start? Most of the time we say, hey, try to go more to the dynamic. And there's actually, all this is in a spectrum, right? Some of these are huge in the equivalents and some of these are on the other side of the dynamic. For some of you might want to find a good middle ground there.
Yeah, so the ideal would be maybe something closer to that middle for most people.
For most people,
right?
Yeah.
So for example, for the more equivalent, functional equivalent translations would be the New American Standard Bible, or the NASB. The English Standard Version, the ESV.
Yeah.
That would be more on the equivalent side. On the dynamic side, we have the New International Version, right? Another one that's very popular, the New Living Translation.
Yeah.
Another one that was very popular in the 70s and 80s is the Living Bible. I remember being in a Bible study in high school and someone referred to the Living Bible as the wishy-washy Bible. And I didn't understand what they meant by that. And she was saying, well, because it's so dynamic. It's so much about the meaning and the words get a little goofy. And I always thought that was, I never forgot how she said that.
That's interesting. I've actually never read the Living Bible translation.
It's fun. Yeah. The Bible I first read when I first became a Christian at 13 years old was the Bible called the Good News Bible. Very dynamic. I would not necessarily recommend that today, but as a 13-year-old that didn't read a lot, it was actually helpful to me. I soon thereafter graduated to the NIV, the New International Version, and then later embraced the English Standard Version, the ESV. But I've been reading for the last 4 years the CSB, the Christian Standard Bible, and really it's far and away been my favorite in my Bible reading lifetime. Mostly because it feels the CSB translators, when they were translating from the Greek and Hebrew, they really liked the ESV and a lot of the things that the English Standard Version was doing, but they felt that the language was clunky. For those of you, I like the English Standard Version. It's a great Bible translation. If you're using that, it's a great Bible translation. But sometimes when you're reading it publicly and you're reading it out loud, the words can be a little clunky. They don't quite flow. And so the CSB translators, the Christian Standard Bible, they were willing to move a little bit on the dynamic to make the wording a little more readable, particularly for public reading. And I think it's excellent.
Yeah, I read the English Standard Version for about 5 to 8 years. That was kind of my go-to after the NIV. And since about January, I think I've moved to the CSB. Partly from your recommendation and Brooks, who does some of the recordings too. They're like, you got to read it. And I've actually fallen in love for that same reason, that there are certain parts in the ESV that do feel clunky, especially more in the Old Testament passages. You're just like, what's going on? The CSB, the Christian Standard Bible, has done an excellent job in that.
Some Bible translations also, they go back and forth.
Yeah.
So the ESV actually does it. The ESV is mostly functional equivalence, literal word for word as much as possible. But there are some passages where they recognize it was just impossible to translate it in a way that made sense. So they go a little bit dynamic occasionally. So you get kind of the best of both worlds. But I don't think they go dynamic enough where the Christian Standard Bible, the CSB, goes a little more dynamic occasionally. I think it's helpful. So there's one other category of Bible translations that I think we have to mention, and that is the paraphrase. Tell us about paraphrases.
So the paraphrase is like, if you looked at the spectrum, it's kind of almost hard to say this, right? But like, you got the equivalence, the dynamic, and then you got kind of like the paraphrase a little bit over here, in the sense of that they're not going for phrase by phrase, but they're just trying to extrapolate the meaning. What's the best meaning of the text? So you got the Message Bible and the Phillips Bible, and they're excellent. They wouldn't be Bibles that you use for study, right? Like Bible studies or anything like that in depth. But it's occasional. You want to look through them. You want to see what they're trying to say, because you're just trying to grab the meaning of a certain text. It's an excellent type of resource.
Yeah, the Message, the J.B. Phillips, these are not Bible translations.
Yeah.
They should not be your primary Bible reading.
Correct.
But they can be helpful occasionally if you're reading a quality Bible translation and you want to consult those just to get a better insight.
Yeah.
Right. It's a paraphrase, right?
Yeah, because sometimes what ends up happening is you're reading something, you're a little just confused, or it's just hard to understand. So just getting that outside meaning a little bit, like, oh, okay, I get it. It just sheds a little bit more light to it.
Yeah. And then there are some paraphrases that we would not recommend.
Yeah.
So there are two prominent ones right now in evangelicalism, unfortunately, the Passion Translation and the Mirror Translation. Quite frankly, these aren't even paraphrases, where the message was created by Eugene Peterson, who is a biblical scholar that many of us respect and appreciate. And even though he's not translating the Bible, he's just giving a paraphrase of what he thinks that meanings are. He's still got some scholarly chops.
Yeah.
He's got the ability to read in the original languages and give some paraphrase.
Yeah.
Where these other paraphrases, they're just paraphrasing English words and other English translations. So they're not even going back to the original languages.
Yeah.
They're taking existing English translations, and they are interpreting what they think they mean with their 21st century theology and ideology, and then paraphrasing the Bible in light of their own theology, not to accurately represent what the original authors said, but they're trying to simply push their own theology. And with all due respect, I know it's going to sound heavy or condescending, but many of the people who are promoting these two Bible translations, the Passion, or these Bible paraphrases, the Passion and the Mirror, they are mostly squarely in the heretic category. They've crossed over from Orthodox, conservative, biblical Christianity into these categories that we call heresy or heterodoxy. They're no longer teaching the true Orthodox tenets of the Christian faith, and they've got these Bible translations that they claim that really are just promoting really, really bad, harmful theology. And so we would caution you against using the Passion or the Mirror. So
Yeah.
I got one final thought. Ken, anything we missed?
No, I was just going to say, like, we may not have, like, this is the one, right, Bible translation, but it's important for us to let you guys know, like, hey, there might not be a one, but there are certain things that you do definitely have to watch out for. And like Kenny was saying, the I almost said the Phillips, not the Passion, and what was the other one?
The Mirror.
The Mirror, right? I didn't even know about the Mirror, but like those two, we have to be very careful, because as people of the Word of God, you got to recognize that all these other translations, there have been editors and excellent scholars who have been editing these translations so that we could be entrusted with them, and at the same time we could feel like we can trust these translations. Where these, it's just like a couple guys just come making up some stuff, and you're like, what in the world is going on?
Yeah.
So we have to be very wary of that.
Yeah, my personal favorites: Christian Standard Bible,
Yeah.
English Standard Version. Those would probably be my top two. And then I occasionally consult the New Living Translation or the Message, but those are usually a distance for me, right? CSB, ESV are my go-to.
Yeah.
Typically, and most of it. I'll close with saying this. My youth pastor said this to me in high school. I remember asking him, Pastor Rob, what's the best Bible translation? And he said to me, Kenny, whichever one you will read and obey. That's the best translation.
Ooh, that's really good. That's really good.
Lead you there. Hey, thanks for watching this video. Hopefully this is helpful. Check us out. We've got lots of videos on YouTube. We got a Facebook page. Check out our website. Check out the website, justdisciple.com. Hundreds of blog posts and articles, and we'll catch you in the next video.